I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for May the 26th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, let's expect your our mind alone. And for local information ahead of tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office and official tropical cyclone warning center. So the tropics today are still relatively quiet across the world. The big thing is Super Typhoon Mawar here, west of the Mariana Islands. And this system, really, the only way to describe this system is amazing to watch over the past several days. This has been an amazing storm with how its structure has been, even before Guam and now after Guam. And now there is good news for the Mariana Islands. The system is well west of you. The tropical storm force winds are now over, and the only warnings still active are some high surf warnings, and that will persist for at least the next day or so as the system continues to move west. And then as we get towards the Philippines and Taiwan and Japan, we could expect some higher surf issues, as is normal with these systems while at sea. But in general, this system has been amazing today to just witness on satellite. Here's the sea surface temperature plot, and you can see it's in very warm sea surface temperatures, which is one reason why the system is able to intensify so much. Current winds are estimated to be around 180 to 185 miles per hour, sustained in that. You can also see the amazing structure with that eye just sustaining. And we'll look at a closer look in just a moment. But you can also see the upper level cirrus expanding away from the storm in all directions, indicating a relatively low shear environment, and the shear is going to drop further in the next day, and that coupled with very favorable oceanic conditions, we're expecting the system to be in a near or even possibly perfect environment to stay a really, really strong super typhoon. Here's the close-up infrared loop off of Tropical Tidbits. So you can see that stable eye. Now, we have seen some warming of the cloud tops in recent frames, though this is still a powerful typhoon. Here's the visible loop, and you can just see that eye right there, the stadium effect as the sun rises there. You can see the ocean surface below, and this is just, again, amazing to watch. Now, here's a microwave pass we got earlier today. This was earlier in the afternoon. My time, this would be earlier in the morning, local time. And we can see the inner core structure here, very strong, especially on the southwestern quadrant. But notice these stronger outer bands that were forming around the time of this microwave pass. Throughout the time, these bands would likely wrap fully around this inner core, and we would likely get underway an eye wall replacement cycle from this. And that is expected to occur from this. And after that, the system will likely be ready to go for intensifying again. And typically what happens in these eye wall replacement cycles is the system will weaken a little bit as the inner core will degrade over time as that new ring eventually takes over, and the winds will come down a little bit. But typically in a scenario like this, once the cycle is over, the winds will come right back up to what they were. Possibly, even in this case, it could get stronger, which is kind of crazy to think about, considering this is already 180 to 185 miles per hour. Now, here's one of the factors. I talked about oceanic conditions. You saw the sea surface temperatures on this plot, 30 to 31 degrees Celsius waters. But not only are they warm at the surface, they're also deep. And here is the forecast cone. I can zoom in here. And this is a measure of how deep is the warm water. With these stronger storms, especially when you're at these super typhoon strengths, the system needs warm water, but it also needs that warm water to be deep. And this is a measure of how deep that is. And you can see we're getting into very high oceanic heat content values here, especially over this part of its forecast track, where values are exceeding 150, in some cases exceeding 175. And this alongside the atmospheric conditions that are going to be in place here. I'll go to modeling. Here's the GFS 200 millibar flow. This is 24 hours out from the 12Z runs. This is really in the next 12 hours. And you can see the outflow towards the north and the outflow towards the south. This is a very favorable low shear environment. And if we look at a sounding from the GFS, you can see just how low the shear is. the mean shear from, say, the top of the troposphere to just up above the surface is about 2 knots. So this is a very weak shear, and we also don't have any relative humidity issues across the entire troposphere. And if we look at the European, it's a very similar case. In fact, it's the same case. Shear is even weaker by 1 knot on the European. And you can also see this very favorable upper level pattern, same as the GFS. This is a near perfect environment, really, for the system to intensify. Now, the good news is we are expecting the system to weaken as it gets towards the Philippines. And the main reason for that is just oceanic heat content is not deep this time of year in that part of the basin. We have some, don't get me wrong, we do have some oceanic heat content here, but to sustain a really, really strong storm that in this case would be moving pretty slowly in this part of its track, it would need more of this oceanic heat content here south of the track in the Philippine Sea rather than this low oceanic heat content of where it's tracking. That's why we expect it to weaken a bit. Not a bit, just quite a bit, actually. But now the question comes in, how is the system's track going to evolve? And we still have some uncertainty. This is a GFS 500 millibar flow at 4 days out. This would be Monday evening local time. And we still have some difference between the GFS and the European on where exactly the storm is positioned, but we do have a little more confidence here. Just for comparison, you can see that's where the European is at the same time on Monday. So we have less of a spread between these two models, but they are still showing their differences. As an example, here's a GFS. We have a ridge here placed to the system's east. This is trying to pull the system towards the north. We also have this ridge west of the storm, and this is trying to pull the system southwest towards the Philippines. This net flow from both of these is a very weak flow. It makes for a very weak steering flow, and so the system really just does not move too much. In fact, it stalls for a little bit on both now, the GFS and the European. Now, eventually, this ridge does work out or win this battle, and it may be as well helped by this trough here over Japan, and the system does eventually come up towards Japan and turn non-tropical. Now, there is a difference here between the modeling. You notice how those ridges are split on the GFS at hour 96. Here's the European. There's a very subtle difference. This trough here is a little bit further north. Because of that being a little further north, these ridges are not fully disconnected like they are on the GFS. So rather than both these ridges trying to push it in opposite ways, there is more of a westerly component here, and this system comes more west towards the Philippines. Now, it's not going to be rapidly moving west, but it is still a little bit more westerly motion, and this does change the long-term forecast for this. The GFS, as I said, has that at the end of the run, turning non-tropical and going into Japan. But at the end of this run in the European, I can show you this here, the system stalls there off of the Philippines, and then it slowly tracks up through the southern Japanese islands to where on the end of the run at 240 hours out, this system is still in the southern Japanese islands. It has not moved much in several days in this forecast. That's a very subtle difference. I mean, this is a difference of slight positioning of a trough that means the difference between the system getting out of here pretty quickly, like on the GFS, and the system staying around for quite a while. So there's still a lot of uncertainty, and really we just have to watch how this system tracks. Here's the current forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. You can see they're kind of taking a mean approach from the GFS and European, but they're also looking at different models here. But you can see generally forecasting the system to come up towards northeast of Luzon before slowing down and making that northward turn. And this is a track cone, of course. The impacts will stretch far from this. Even if you have a storm out here, well northeast of Luzon, you can still have significant winds. Look at how large this wind field is, and we are likely to see at least a couple of eyewall replacement cycles as the system tracks westwards, and those also increase the size of the storm. So those in the Philippines and in Taiwan and Japan, even though it may not seem like immediately this storm is coming to you, you still need to prepare. You need to have your preparedness kit ready, not just for Mawar. It's a good thing to have ready as we are getting into the time of year where we start to see these storms more and more common as we get into the active seasons in the Northern Hemisphere. But that is all for now. I will leave you all with the forecast cone here from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. I'll have future updates as the system continues tracking west. And like I said last night, I might talk about the system off the U.S. coast if it is warranted, as we do have maybe a messy weekend here, or holiday weekend rather, in the United States. But thank you for watching. That's it for now. And I'll have another video out hopefully tomorrow.